Welcome to the Get Real Podcast, your high-octane boost of full-on reality therapy for personal, business, and investing success with your host, Ron Phillips, because somebody's got to tell it like it is.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Get Real Podcast. Ron Phillips here. Today is that show where I can't believe I have to say this yet again, but I will. So our election is coming up, and all of the normal, you would obviously think these people are going to be out there campaigning as surrogates for each candidate, right? And this is not a pro either side video, but this is a financial discussion. And I get frustrated every year when the billionaire class comes out, and I don't have anything wrong with the billionaire. I have billionaire friends. No big deal. Happy for them. Want to be one at some point. But it drives me a little bit mad when a handful of them come out every 4 years and start talking about tax policy. And they always come out and they side with whichever party, in which case this time, and for the majority of my life anyway, it has been the left, who have this talking point about taxing millionaires and billionaires and making them pay their fair share, which I'm all for. Millionaires and billionaires paying their fair share. Incidentally, I'm for everybody paying their fair share. But every single 4-year season, in the last, 3, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is, here comes the billionaires. Now, typically, it's Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and some other folks. They've been pretty quiet this year. And so they had to go like second string. This year, they had to go second string. And I have some theories on why that is, and I will discuss them. But this year, the loudest voice of the billionaire class has been Mark Cuban. If you'd asked me before this, I have a pretty decent amount of respect for Mark Cuban and his business acumen. But now I've lost a ton of respect for this guy because he's out there trying really hard to be the kinder, gentler billionaire. And he's just not being honest. He's just not being honest with everybody. And that drives me nuts. Well, that's not true. I mean, some of the things that he's saying are actually honest. So let's break this down. So I saw Mark Cuban on a show when I was on a plane coming back from my speaking gig that I just got done with. And he's trying to explain Kamala Harris's tax proposals. Now, she's since backed off of some of these proposals, but let's just go through them. The first most egregious one, which Cuban talks about up front, is taxing unrealized capital gains. And if you don't know what that means, imagine you have a stock, okay? And that stock, it's always going up and it's going down, it's going sideways. And an unrealized gain is every single time let's say this year, your stock went up 20%. Okay. She's saying is whether or not you sell that stock, we're going to tax you on that gain and you have to pay the gains. Now, if you think that through for just a second, most people are not going to have the ability to just pony up in cash this amount of money, right, to pay these gains. I mean, most people are just not going to be able to do that. And so this has not been popular. This has not been popular with anybody, but especially this has not been popular with the billionaire class. Enter Mark Cuban. Okay, so Mark Cuban, now she has other things, right? She wants to increase taxes on corporations. She wants to increase taxes on quote unquote the rich. She wants to increase. Well, she just wants to increase. I mean, just tax it as much as you can tax it. That's a generalization, I realize, but we'll get into it. Okay. So Mark Cuban, the first thing Mark Cuban says, he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. She's not going to do that, taxing unrealized capital gains. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, that is the only tax. So I would have more respect for Mark Cuban if he said the following. Yeah, they're not going to do that. And the reason they're not going to do that is because every single politician is also wealthy, a millionaire or billionaire. And they don't like that tax. And the reason they don't like that tax is because it directly impacts them. So Mark Cuban, the only tax she's talking about increasing that really impacts you at all is that tax. And this is what irritates me about Warren Buffett in the past and Bill Gates in the past and Mark Cuban today. They're talking about income taxes. They're talking about wage taxes. So I want to be super duper clear about this. Billionaires don't care about wage tax, about earned income taxes. They don't care about them because they don't pay them. And even if they do pay them, it's such a small part of the money that they actually make. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference because they use the tax codes that exist to allow people to scale the ladder in their favor. And now that they've made it, they no longer care anymore. And that irritates me. So let me break this down. Before I get there. The new number for being rich, it used to be $250,000, but because of all of the inflation that we've had, it's now $400,000. And that's another whole podcast. Don't get me started about these morons talking about how they're going to fix inflation when they're the ones that caused it. And by the way, it wasn't just Kamala. I don't know how to say her name. It's not just her and Biden. Trump started it. And before him, Obama. And before him, Bush. They all did it. But Trump really amped it up because of COVID. And then Joe Biden was like, you ain't seen nothing yet. Hold my beer. Watch this. So anyway, back to taxes. So the new number is 400,000. So Mark Cuban says something that isn't even a policy of hers. He says that the increase in capital gains tax, it doesn't apply to people who make $400,000 or less, which is not even part of her proposal. He just made that up. But even if it was that, it doesn't make any difference. The money that we want to come back from capital gains and be in America is of the wealthy. Well, it's all of it, but it's really the wealthy. It's big corporations. It's the wealthy that we want to be moving their money. As they move their money, it makes more opportunity for everyone else. So anyway, she wants to impose higher capital gains taxes, which is brilliant since, let's just put this into real estate perspective for a second. Increase the capital gains tax. What does that do? What does that do for real estate, for the affordable real estate that everybody wants to have around here? Well, the people who would pay the capital gains tax, they're not going to sell their properties now because they'll just wait for the taxes to come back down. It's absurd. It's absurd. But let's talk about these income taxes because this is the part that really irritates me. So these billionaires get out there. Mark Cuban gets on there and he's like, hey, listen, we need to have the wealthy above 400,000. Now this is key. They talk about millionaires and billionaires. Millionaires and billionaires. And then they set the number for the rich at 400,000. So over 400,000, you're going to get taxed, quote unquote, your fair share, which means a buttload more. Okay. So over 400,000. Here's the piece that they don't talk about that is really, really important. Most small businesses in America are S corporation or LLCs taxed as an S corporation, which means that it's a flow-through entity, meaning whatever is left over in the company, whatever the company's P&L shows, profit and loss shows, is a personal income to the owner of that company. So let's go through some numbers really quick. And I'm not going to use her numbers. I'm going to use round numbers, because if I don't use round numbers, it's going to be really difficult to do in the car, which is where I'm at right now. But let's go through this for just a second. This is really, really important. So let's say a company ends the year with $500,000 in profit. So they're over the threshold. Now they're going to get taxed a higher amount because they're over this magical number that makes you rich. Okay. Now let's say that business owner paid themselves $100,000 that year. Okay. So they didn't pay themselves 500,000. They paid themselves 100,000. Okay. Well, if I pay myself $100,000 this year, but my company made $500,000, and that $500,000 now goes, I left that money in the company. Okay. Because why did I do that? Because I'm planning on growth for this year. So I'm planning on growth. I need the money in there. I need that capital in there to be able to hire the people that I need to be able to grow my company, and for all of the other things that go into growing a company. Okay. So I leave the $500,000 in there. I have personally taken $100,000. That was my income for the year. Okay. Now, here's what happens. The 100,000 that I took and the 500,000 that's in the company all flows through to me. So that's $600,000 of income that I have to personally pay taxes on. Now I am, quote unquote, the rich, even though I really only made $100,000, and I have to pay a higher tax rate because I am, quote unquote, rich. So now what happens? So let's say the top tax bracket, instead of 37%, goes to 40%. Let's just do some math. Matter of fact, let's use 20%, because it's not going to be less than that. Let's say it's 20%. 20% of 600,000 is 120. So now I have to pay $120,000 in taxes when I net made in my pocket 100,000. So when Mark Cuban gets on there and he talks about the rich are the only ones who are going to pay these additional taxes, it's not true. Small businesses in America, the vast majority of them are LLCs taxed as an S corp. And all of the money that is still sitting in the company flows through to them, and they get taxed on it. When you do that, you crush small business. Now, at one time, Mark Cuban had a small business, but he's forgotten about that, or it's convenient to him that he doesn't have to talk about that anymore. And Warren Buffett, there's this whole thing about Warren Buffett not having the same tax bracket as his secretary, which is a horrible thing. Well, it's super simple, folks. Warren Buffett doesn't pay taxes on earned income. He gets portfolio income, and portfolio income is taxed different. And why is it taxed different? Because all the politicians who make the laws, they also mostly have portfolio income. They're rich people. They're very wealthy people, and they make the laws for themselves. And it frustrates the heck out of me every single 4 years when they all get on and act like this kinder, gentler billionaire, when really all they're doing is socking it to the people who are trying to climb the business ladder. That's all they're doing. If Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all of the other ones who want to get on there and blow me, and I'm not talking about all the billionaires who don't do this. I'm talking about only the ones who want to get on television and spew this ridiculous line that they always do. What every single reporter should ask them is if they're for a wealth tax. whatever the top tax bracket is that they're preaching. Ask them if they're willing to do that for a wealth tax. So you want a billionaire to be equivalent with a high earning, professional, attorney, dentist, doctor. You want to put those on par? Ask them if they'll pony up their wealth for a 40 or a 50 or a 60% tax. And watch them slither right off the television screen, because there's no way that they're going to do that. Because they've already made their money, and that money is now making portfolio income for them, or some other form of income that is not taxed the same as income, as your earned income is. And so when they talk about the tax brackets going up, they're not talking about taxing themselves. They're talking about taxing other people. It's so disingenuous. So before you go pull the lever or push the button, remember that these people who are on there and they're talking about how this is fair, it isn't fair. It's not fair. And there's no way that any of them would be for making it fair. So until next week, get out there and make something happen, and let that something be going to vote.
This has been the Get Real Podcast. To subscribe and for more information, including a list of all episodes, go to getrealestatesuccess.com.